The biggest shift in accounting just happened. QuickBooks has released AI agents that promise to categorize your transactions, reconcile your books, even analyze data faster than most CPAs. Some are calling it the end of accountants. Others say it's just hype and that the old way is still faster. Over the past few weeks, my team and I tested these new agents. We tried everything: hands-on experiments, hours of research, even interviews with Intuit themselves. And what I found is surprising. Stick around, because what I'm about to show you may literally save your career. All right, so QuickBooks isn't calling this AI automation. They're also not calling it AI assistants. They're calling it digital teammates. And honestly, that language makes me pretty nervous because teammates don't just follow instructions. Teammates make decisions, they take initiative, they act independently.
Right, so think of these as, almost like an employee that you can bring on and will dramatically streamline, simplify, take on a lot of the mundane work that used to take your staff hours and hours to do. And I mean, it can literally do that in seconds, as well as provide really, really powerful insights into data, right?
So let's meet these so-called teammates, specifically with the accounting agent. QuickBooks claims it can keep your books clean, even complete a month-end close from start to finish. But before we test that out, let's quickly look at how accountants have always done the month-end close. Before you can drive any meaningful insights about a business, you have to go through the grind that the accountants know all too well, called the month-end close. It starts with importing transactions from bank statements, credit cards, and whatever other sources you're pulling from. Sometimes that syncs automatically. Other times, you're stuck downloading a CSV and uploading it manually. Once the data is in, you have to classify each and every transaction. And that doesn't just mean throwing it into a general ledger account. You also need to tag the right vendor or customer, attach receipts, maybe even assign classes for department, location, or project. Then comes reconciliation. That's how you prove that every transaction in your books actually matches what cleared the bank. This is the bank rec, the heartbeat of accuracy. Now, if you're on cash accounting, the last step is reviewing your financial statements, spotting anomalies, and signing off that everything's clean before finalizing your reports. Now, that's the old way. Let's now see how these new digital teammates claim to handle the exact same process and whether they're actually saving us time or just complicating a system we already know works. All right, first up, getting my transactions into QuickBooks. Now, most of my bank feeds connect automatically, but I still work with a legacy bank that requires me to download and import a CSV. So here's the routine: download a CSV, rearrange the columns, upload it, and hope that QuickBooks doesn't mix up the income and expense columns. And spoiler alert, it usually does, which means deleting, re-uploading, and remapping all of that information we just uploaded. But now QuickBooks says they have an agent to do it for me. Instead of wrestling with CSVs, you can just upload a PDF and it automatically extracts the data. Even better, it highlights the exact spot on the PDF where it pulled each of the numbers from. That's pretty slick. But the real question isn't about uploading. It's about what comes next. How well can it actually categorize these transactions? Now, normally I would go line by line. And if a bill matches a transaction amount, usually QuickBooks gets this right. But if there are two bills for the same exact amount, QuickBooks usually gets it wrong because it's confused which is which. Now, if it's a vendor that I've used in the past, QuickBooks most likely will suggest the correct account based off of our history. But with new vendors, not so much. So here's what I'll do. I'll search for a history of that vendor, and if nothing comes up, then I'll just type it into Google and I'll see what Google comes up with. And if nothing comes up on Google, I'll export it to a CSV and then send it to my client to get their feedback on what it relates to. And here's the catch. Clients are busy. It can take days, sometimes weeks to get an answer. And if that answer is something I should have already known, it makes me look really bad. Here, QuickBooks' new agent starts by flagging which transactions they're confident about and which ones they're not. That transparency alone is a huge step forward. And if there are multiple bills for the same amount, QuickBooks now pulls in the actual vendor and invoice information from the description in order to match it to the correct bill. That's already a lot more accurate. For vendors I've never seen before, the agent can actually search for information on that vendor and suggest a category, while showing me the reasoning behind its choice. No more black box, no more blind guesses.
So we have completely reimagined the core experience, right? Which is something we haven't done in 10 years. And the reason we did that is because we have this new categorization and matching engine that is, it's a hybrid. We still use some machine learning and things like that, but it's got LLMs at its core. And it can do some really amazing things. Number one, we're seeing customers who have had early access to our beta program before we launched this. We saw a 10-point increase in their categorization accuracy. And that's a from to. Like, hey, they've been using QuickBooks for years. It turned this on, and suddenly we see it spike. It's just the technology is more accurate. Also, it enables us to cover use cases we've historically never been able to cover. So things like matching, right? So if you've got batch deposits, you've got fees, those are really tricky things to get right in a deterministic way. But with LLMs and reasoning, it can actually capture those things, right? And so if you're using a platform that takes out fees when you get your payouts, like the matching is actually intelligent enough to capture those and realize that, hey, this deposit is associated with this payout.
But here's the real game changer, the request more info button. Instead of spamming clients with dozens of emails, I can set when and how the agents will contact them, or generate a single magic link to send all by myself. And if a client responds with incomplete information, the new Intuit Assist follow-up feature has an actual full conversation now with the client, requesting everything that it needs. It clarifies the details, it updates the category, and then shows me a full audit trail of how exactly it got to that category. Now that's huge, because what used to take me days now is just done with a few minutes. So categorization seems like a real big improvement, but how does it handle the next big step? Bank reconciliations. Now, I've always had a love-hate relationship with bank reconciliations. I love them because they're the single most important part of a month-end close. If you can't prove that your cash on your balance sheet matches the cash in your bank, you're in trouble. These numbers form the basis for financial statements that can drive hundreds of millions in investment decisions. And when they don't match, it could be a red flag for fraud. But here's the other side. I hate bank reconciliations because they're painfully tedious. And they've been that way for my entire career. You start by opening the bank statement, entering the ending balance and closing date, and then it's a line-by-line reconciliation tying your bank statement to your accounting software. Now, I oftentimes would print this out and go line by line, checking off each and every transaction as I would do that bank reconciliation. Those were just hours of the most boring work that you can imagine. And I've probably done hundreds of bank recs in my career. They didn't tell me about this whenever I was sitting for the CPA exam. I thought to myself, there's gotta be a better way. Well, let's see how the new QuickBooks agents now solve for this. First, I upload a PDF and QuickBooks automatically extracts the ending balance and statement ending date. I don't have to type anything in manually. Then it automatically matches the transactions and flags the ones that need review. It even explains the differences. For example, an expense that hit on my bank statement but didn't yet post to my accounting software on the cutoff date. That's an acceptable difference. But you know what's not an acceptable difference? If a transaction shows up in one place and not the other. That's a red flag. And the agent makes that pretty clear too. Honestly, even though I worry about AI replacing jobs, if it means no more manual bank recs, good riddance. So here's where we are. We imported our transactions, we classified them, and flagged the ones that need client input, and we reconciled the books in lightning time. That's a huge time saver. But time isn't the only thing that matters. The real test is whether these agents can go beyond the basics and actually spot anomalies in the data. Early in my career, I had a manager who could spot mistakes in seconds. I'd spend hours, sometimes days, preparing reports. Then she'd glance at the numbers and ask, why is accounts payable so high? Or where's the rent expense for this month? And every time she was right. I'd go back and dig in and realize I'd overlooked something small, but totally critical. That's the reality for accountants. we're buried in details, and it's hard to zoom out and see the forest beyond the trees. My solution was flux analysis, comparing balances from period to period. Sometimes I'd run this inside QuickBooks. Other times, I'd export it to Excel and use our add-in Model Wiz to build comparisons against last month or last year. If something looked off, I'd click into QuickBooks and trace the transaction. It worked, but it was slow. And I wasn't alone. Thousands of accountants say the same thing. Spotting anomalies is one of the hardest parts of this job. QuickBooks Agent now has an Insights button built right into the P&L. At a glance, I can see the items it's flagged as potential anomalies. Click once and I see the historical trend. Click again and I get a full PDF writing up and explaining exactly what's going on. Back when I worked under that manager, this would have saved me hours of back and forth. And today, it's one more safeguard that helps me avoid sending clients incorrect financials that could get me into trouble.
We're going from doing the work to reviewing the work.
I have to admit, everything we've seen so far makes a lot of sense. But here's the uncomfortable question. Where does that leave me? If the core of accounting is being automated, how am I supposed to keep running a firm? Sure, today these agents have limits, but what about next year? 5 years from now? 10? Will accountants even exist?
And the same thing happens. People get upset, people say it's not possible, and then they riot, and then technology just has a way of winning.
My cousin Danny has been pushing me on this for months. He is a successful entrepreneur with multiple exits and investments in high growth companies. He spent over 10,000 hours researching AI, and he's convinced accountants are about to be replaced.
Yeah, I know it sounds extreme, but I've been in this space and studied this industry, and the pattern is always the same. People think they're safe until they're not.
But here's the kicker. Danny doesn't think we have 10 years. He thinks we have 6 months.
But accounting is different. There's so much nuance to what I do every day.
And I understand where you're coming from, but if you put it into context, other knowledge workers, which is the class that you're in, say the same. It's the same thing with attorneys. They go to school, they study, they're the experts, and there's nuance to law, but in fact, there's large AIs that are being built to develop expertise in that and reduce legal headcount. And the same in medicine. Medicine is very fast. By the time you're done with med school, it's all new class of medicine, new ways of practicing. And the fact is we won't need as many doctors or registered nurses because AI is already starting to act as a force multiplier there.
Okay, but 6 months, that timeline seems pretty crazy.
Yeah, well, in some cases that would be conservative because the companies that I'm seeing out there are already adopting blockchain combined with AI that accelerate the practice of accounting. What used to take hours, days, or weeks can now be done in seconds and minutes.
And that's when it hit me. If these agents are really here to put me out of a job, then maybe I shouldn't be so excited about them after all. So I needed to hear the other side. Specifically, what is Intuit's real intention behind building these agents?
And so to me, the task, it may get replaced, but that value and that role that the accountant is playing as a trusted advisor to their client, I view that as unchanged.
This is Ted Callahan, one of the accounting leaders at Intuit and host of the On the Books podcast.
And if we were to pull back and you think about previous big technology changes, Josh, right? Nobody's lamenting that we're not using abacuses anymore or calculators, right? We've made that move, and it's like, oh no, it's how we get our job done. We have a general ledger, right? When that doesn't work, we can pull it out and do some reporting things, whether it's in Excel or other capabilities. And so to me, what's going to be changing is, hey, there's going to be now technology that really helps doing a lot of the work. And so one of the things that we think a lot about is the job of the accountant is going to move from do to review. So you're going to still bring all of your critical thinking and faculties to the work at hand. But what's going to be different, rather than spending so much time just getting the transformation down, right? Getting the entries categorized correctly, having that reconciliation happen, then seeing, okay, what's going on? Oh, I got to back up. Oh, I missed that cent, right? I transposed those digits. That's going to be automated for you. Now you're going to be reviewing and seeing what are the anomalies, what are the areas you need to go deep dive. Oh, there's an insight here. That then becomes the substrate of that conversation that you get to have with your client.
And I guess to just challenge that even more, I imagine there are a lot of industries where there used to be a quote unquote middleman, where you needed to go to that middleman in order to get your professional services done. And that middleman got replaced with technology. So for example, I think AI has been incredible with marketing and copywriting. I imagine these copywriting firms have very much taken a hit because a lot of this can be replaced with AI. So to challenge what you're saying, what's stopping a client from just not even using me at all? If QuickBooks' service is so easy with these AI agents, maybe they don't even need me for the relationship.
Yeah, I think so. It's a great question. And I think the answer is it probably will depend on the type of small business or mid-market business that an individual is running, their own sophistication, their own financial savviness, as well as what the technology can do and what are they looking for in the form of, do they have time to, get all of that data correct? If it's wrong, would they know? Would they trust it? Would they bet their business on a recommendation that's being made? If there isn't that third party to kind of say, hey, I'm the expert here.
So if it's a given that we're right now at a place where things are rapidly changing, what got us here is not going to be what gets us there. What should I be doing today in order to continue to be valuable to the clients that I'm providing services to?
I love that question. And ultimately, I've learned this community knows better than me. And so I would say, what are you going to do?
Ted's words resonated with me, but so did my cousins. The AI revolution is here. We can't stop it. The only way forward is to embrace it. But what can AI not replace? It can't build the relationships I've developed with my clients. It can't replicate the trust that comes from late night calls, tough conversations, and years of shared context. It can't understand the dynamics in a boardroom or subtle pressure department heads face when making decisions. In short, it can't be human. I don't believe AI will replace accountants entirely, at least not yet. But the accountants who understand how to use AI will replace the accountants who don't. So if your day is filled with categorizing transactions or entering data or processing reconciliations, those tasks will absolutely get automated. Accountants who treat themselves as human calculators will be replaced by those who use AI as leverage for strategic work. Now, if we're being realistic about the long term, AI will probably surpass us at data analysis, pattern recognition, or even professional skepticism eventually.
Accounting is just, as you look at it as a domain, it is so ripe for massive advancements in terms of just like up-leveling the work that users can and should be doing, right? Because when you look at some of the fundamentals of what is the work itself, it's just so ripe for AI. And so I think it's one of those things where it's right at the cross section of the domain and the technology, and it's just very, very well served in this space.
There's an old saying, when you're stuck in a fog, it can be really tough to see the path ahead, but you can see the next step. And right now, the next step is clear. Learn these tools, embrace them, don't run away from them. Don't just stick with the way you've been doing things the old way, because the new way is changing, and learning the new way may just be the thing that saves your career. Thanks so much for watching, and a huge thanks to Intuit for sponsoring this video and giving us the resources to dig into the space in such depth. Partnering with their team has been a real milestone for this channel, and so has been building out this new studio that you see over here. This is really amazing. None of it would have been possible without your support. So thank you for showing up, and thank you for continuing to invest in yourself to grow in your career in finance and accounting. And while I have you here, don't forget one of the most important tools in your toolkit, learning how to build a 3-statement financial model. And you can learn how to do that in this video right up here. I'm Josh, your CFO guy, and I'll catch you next time.